And it is time now for our political roundtable. And joining us today, Democratic analyst Marsh and Republican analyst Amy Carnevale. Thanks for being here. It has been a rough week, to say the least, for travelers.
If you had to get anywhere.
Oh, it sure has. People have waited in the longest TSA lines ever because of Homeland Security shutdown. President Trump deployed ICE agents to airports across the country to help. Was he trying to send a bigger message here, Marianne?
Well, deploying ICE anywhere isn't about solving a problem at the location. This is all about getting people to realize that there are going to be ICE agents at every polling location in this country. So that's what this is all about. ICE didn't do anything to improve immigration or people who are in this country who should not be here at this time. They did nothing to get the lines to go faster or scan people if they're TSA or not or anything else. They handed out bottled water, which anyone could do. So this is all about the November election. It's all about putting ICE in our polling locations and postal locations because they can alter the election. So he's trying to get people used to seeing ICE agents in places they shouldn't be.
So I would say kudos to President Trump for stepping up and trying to find a solution, whether it be deploying ICE agents to help and then declaring an emergency to pay the TSA workers. So clearly President Trump is trying to step in where Senate Democrats have failed 7 times to pass legislation until last week. And hopefully the House will follow suit.
It did nothing to make lines go faster or make security better, number one. Number two, they had 11 chances.
So
Democrats
again,
put 11
President
chances
Trump is stepping in to try to find a solution where Senate Democrats dragged their heels.
He could have paid them weeks ago.
They should have been paid weeks ago, we agree.
And Donald Trump stopped it.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, was this a real solution? It's something, it's visibly looks like something, but we also saw a lot of those videos of them milling around.
It's an attempt to try to solve the problem. Clearly, again, we needed Senate Democrats to drop their resistance on adding policy changes for ICE to try to pay TSA workers. And finally, that happened. And hopefully we can move forward with a more permanent solution.
I mean, he's saying he wants a solution, but then you have to remember he was trying to tie the SAVE Act to this funding, and he was telling Republicans not to do anything unless it involved the SAVE Act.
It had nothing to do with security, nothing to do with getting people through the line. It had nothing to do with any of the problems that were in front of them, and the fact that Donald Trump unilaterally, without the Senate or the House, said, I'm going to pay you now. He could have done that 41 days ago.
But again, we need a permanent solution, and kudos to President Trump for trying to step in and solve the problem.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about safety locally. The Massachusetts House passed the PROTECT Act. So what this would do, it would ban ICE from making arrests inside courthouses without criminal warrants. It would also ban local law enforcement from initiating contact with ICE in certain circumstances. It still needs to be passed by the Senate. So should local law enforcement be able to work with ICE? Is this a safety issue, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for raising the question. So it is a safety issue, and if legislators and the governor and the mayor of Boston want ICE off of our streets, out of our communities, they should be working with authorities to transfer criminal illegal immigrants in a safe manner, and that means in the courthouses. So there should be cooperative agreements, and that goes all the way down to local law enforcement, because that's how we're going to make our communities safer.
Marianne?
No. Local law enforcement is to do local law enforcement. Immigration is federal law enforcement. That's a federal charter to do that. Neither one should be interacting with the other. It's this, like the separation of church and state. So local law enforcement should stick to their job. ICE should stick to their job and do their job, which they've yet to do, and that's federal. That's the difference.
But if you have criminal illegal immigrants being arrested by local law enforcement, there should be detainer requests in place. They should be working with ICE to transfer them in a safe manner.
This was never an issue until Donald Trump decided to use ICE for all the reasons it shouldn't be used.
All right, House Minority Leader Brad Jones has decided not to seek re-election. He has served for 2 decades as Minority Leader. He's viewed as a moderate Republican, similar to Governors Baker and Weld, and it is a small caucus of Republicans up there on Beacon Hill. Who is the future? Will we see a more moderate person take the lead, or someone who's a little bit more hardline, who's willing to sort of step in and block the Democratic supermajority? I'm going to start with you, Amy, on this.
Yeah, so first of all, Leader Jones has served with distinction for over 3 decades.
3 decades, excuse me.
So He has served both the Republican Party and his district extraordinarily well. He's served his caucus well. Certainly the new minority leader will chart a different course because they will have perhaps some different priorities, but it's important to remember the voting bloc. So it'll be those House Republicans who are elected by typically more moderate districts.
He did have sort of a hardline challenger not too long ago, and he lost. So Brad Jones did not lose; he remained in his position.
Exactly. So the voting populace is those House Republicans. So again, the vast majority come from more purple districts, more moderate districts, and so I think they'll elect a leader who represents their values. And certainly the next leader will have perhaps a different style, but again, I think more moderate image given it's Massachusetts.
What do you think, Marian?
I don't envy the job Amy has to do because the energy in the Republican Party is more towards the MAGA right Trump Republicanism. You look at the House and the Senate Republican members, they're not Charlie Baker, they're not Bill Weld, they're not Paul Cellucci, they're not Jane Swift. They're more conservative. So I think they're going to drive the party more to the right at a time when people in Massachusetts don't want that. They don't want Trump acolytes. They don't want Trump, period. And that's what's going to have to be dealt with going forward.
All right. Now to a story really about police accountability. Suffolk County DA Kevin Hayden under fire now from law enforcement officials and some politicians for charging a Boston police officer with manslaughter. To remind you of the story, that officer shot and killed a carjacking suspect. The officer has pleaded not guilty. It's the first time in decades, I believe since 1991, that a Boston police officer has been charged with manslaughter. I mean, how much is Hayden putting himself on the line? Amy, he could have gone to a grand jury first, and he didn't. He decided it will now go to a grand jury, but he took this action, I believe, within 8 days.
Yeah, so I think it's unconscionable that this arrest was made and the action taken before an internal investigation could have been completed. There was no body worn camera footage released to the public to justify this sort of action. Law enforcement officials put their lives on the line every day for our communities. We're talking about a career criminal in this case with up to 50 prior arrests. He had 4 pending felony warrants. I just think it's an outrage that this arrest occurred, and I hope that Kevin Hayden is called to account for it.
Marianne, your thoughts?
He will only be called to account if he has an opponent, right? And so we don't know that, but let's go back 4 years to 2022 when this happened. Rachel Rollins was the DA then, and she stepped down to become the U.S. attorney and then was forced to resign from that post. The political fight and campaign between Ricardo Arroyo and Kevin Hayden was apocalyptic. It was like the worst race anyone. You didn't want to vote for either of them. Now it's reported that Rachel Rollins is thinking about running for DA again. So one way or another, it will be an issue. It depends who runs against him if he gets a challenger.
All right. On that, our conversation continues after the break.